This video talks about how we handle the experiences we're confronted with. Understanding components of this cognitive cycle will help us understand what we need to change. In previous videos, we've established that being human is hard, and we aren't very good at handling it, which leaves us carrying the weight of generations of issues, our individual issues, and issues embedded in our cultures and societies. To really create healthy and sustainable change, we need a better understanding of the cognitive cycle underlying how we handle our experience. First, understanding the cycle helps us see where the issues are coming from and where changes need to be made. Being human is hard, but our issues are embedded in the cognitive cycle within our minds. Any change must be a change in our minds, and the change must be in each of our individual minds. There's no collective unimind where one change changes all of us. Second, then, if change must happen within each of our individual minds, we have to ask ourselves if any of us, or even all of us, have the right to change someone's mind for any reason. Can we, for any reason, decide what's healthy for them or what they should change their mind to? And third, how do we actually know what the right healthy state is, especially for each individual? To even start to answer the question about what is healthy, we need to dig through all of the issues embedded in our cognitive cycle to find out who we really are. Let's start by defining what we mean by handling our experience. We discussed before that being human is hard, and so we're confronted with our experience of life that we must respond to. As you'll see, the reality that we think we're experiencing is really just our perceptions and interpretations. What we're calling handling our experience involves what we do individually and collectively to make sense of that experience and then respond to it. We handle our experience on 4 levels: emotional, operational, constructional, and systemic. We'll go into each of these levels in a moment. First, it's worth reiterating that how we handle things collectively, such as how we handle things as groups, organizations, and societies, is all a product of how we handle things individually. We sometimes act as if there's some central processor and hard drive, some collective unimind, that acts outside of our individual minds. But there is no unimind. To be sure, there are certain group dynamics where we handle things certain ways because of the people around us, which we'll cover shortly. But all of this happens within our individual minds. And even the seemingly more tangible things in our systemic level are still only meaningful based on our perceptions and interpretations of them. That means that any changes must happen within the minds of each individual involved. Let's take a look at each of the 4 levels. We'll start with the systemic level, because this is probably the level we're most familiar with. This level is the settings, relationships, structures, and resources that comprise the context we experience things within. As individuals, we experience this level as our environment. It's the level we experience as most tangible, and probably the level we consider to be reality. It's probably the level we feel we have the least control over, but remember that what we experience as reality is really just our perceptions and interpretations. It's only meaningful because we interpret it as meaningful. Also, much of what we experience as our environment comes from the collective level because most of our individual environment is formed by our interaction with others. The more supportive our environment is, the healthier we'll be in it. Collectively, we handle the systemic level as institutions, where we attempt to make our collective beliefs and dynamics more tangible. The constructional level consists of the concepts, models, and beliefs we created or inherited from others about our experience of life. Individually, we'll call these concepts, models, and beliefs mindsets. We can think of these mindsets like data stored on a hard drive or in RAM. We access this data constantly as we're working through our experience. The more accurate our mindsets are, the more effective we'll be. Collectively, we experience these concepts, models, and beliefs within our cultures and narratives. Remember, there is no collective hard drive. The culture and narratives are all around us and have been passed down and compounded through countless generations. The operational level is how we actively process our experience. Individually, we refer to this level as thought processes, and we might also refer to it as our train of thought or our self-talk. It consists of things like perception, attention, awareness, recognition, interpretation, inference, prediction, reasoning, and problem solving. The more effectively we process our experience, the healthier we'll be. For example, our responses to life are much healthier the more effectively we perceive and interpret our experience. Collectively, we experience this level as social dynamics. For example, think about social power and how it influences the way we think about things collectively. It's worth mentioning here that these levels are not always distinct. They tend to blend together. For example, we use thought processes to create mindsets, and our thought processes then refer frequently to those mindsets as we process. Our culture and narratives can be embedded in institutions and can reinforce social dynamics, which in turn enforce the cultural narratives. It isn't so important that we correctly classify our experience into these different levels, but that we know that these levels are happening and how they interact with each other. The fourth level is the emotional level. This is the deepest and most complex level, and we know so little about it that we tend to dismiss it as unimportant. But what if it's the most important level? Individually, we call this level feelings. Collectively, we experience this level as our sense of cultural identity. Like thought processes, feelings give us a sense for how we are within our experience. But unlike thought processes, feelings are much harder to define or articulate, which is why we would rather not deal with them. In fact, think about how much of our mindsets, narratives, institutions, etc., are built to help us dismiss and avoid our feelings. What if what we experience as feelings is actually a sense of something much deeper, a sense of who we are? We sometimes experience it as a spiritual connection. Our feelings show us what we want and need, what is valuable to us, what we're passionate about. It's where we find our natural feelings of enthusiasm for life and empathy with others. To be sure, we've covered up our feelings so much with mindsets, narratives, institutions, etc., that we've lost our sense of what our feelings actually are. We tell ourselves and each other what we're meant to feel and value and believe. To be healthier on this level, we need to be more connected to our emotions. In fact, our connection to our emotions is really the only sense we have about what healthy actually is. We should also note that we're not always very aware of what's happening on these levels. We might think we're conscious of what's going on in our minds, but in reality, so much more is going on subconsciously that we're not aware of. Think, for example, about how quickly we react or jump to conclusions without giving any thought to why we reacted that way or arrived at that conclusion. Collectively, though we pretend that everything is explicit and out in the open, we know that most of what happens in our interactions and relationships goes on tacitly. Think about those unspoken rules we feel compelled to follow even though no one speaks about them. When we look at these levels together, we start to see how complex our cognitive experience is and why our simplistic solutions to change only make things worse. If we want real, sustainable change that's healthy for each of us and for all of us, we need a sophisticated solution that takes all of these levels into account. One key leverage point can be exploring more accurate mindsets. Our inaccurate mindsets seem to hinder so much of what happens on the other levels, and mindsets are really the only components that we can share with others. We should pay special attention to meta mindsets, which are our mindsets about how this cognitive experience works, such as our mindsets about mindsets themselves. The more accurately we understand how our cognitive experience works, the better we'll be able to handle our experience both on the individual and collective levels. Learning is the solution. Learning starts the virtuous cycle by helping us change ourselves, making us more effective in helping others to change, which in turn helps us to change. Learning also creates the frameworks we need for real change. Learning is the magic solution that will help us realize our potential. If you join us on the journey, we can make big differences together.